Welcome to Woodlands North. Do you enjoy spending time in the outdoors, fishing, hunting, hiking, mountain biking, bushcrafting, or other related outdoor activities? If you do, we've got some important information, so stick around, it's coming up next. Good morning, friends. Hope everyone's well today. I've got an indoor video for you today. Thought it was important to bring this to your attention. Now that the spring is blooming, there's two things that I always do. Number one is I always prepare my gear for trout season. One of my all-time favorite things to do, go out in the woods for a day or longer and catch wild trout. Awesome time. The number two thing that I do is prepare for tick season. What prompted me to make this video was the rising occurrences of these aggravating pests along with all the misinformation out there. I've done my best to do my research and give you some clear, concise facts based on that research and my own experiences. That being said, don't substitute any of this information for that of a doctor or healthcare professional. Do your own research and be wise. As a kid, I grew up in a small town, had a lot of wooded areas, and I was always drawn to those magical, beautiful places. Anywhere I could find a forest, a creek that I could run through, I did it all the time. And it's just amazing because all those years of doing that, rolling around in the grass and going here, jumping through the creek and finding the deepest woods I could, I've never even heard of ticks, never had one on me, never anything. That is until about 10 years ago. So some time ago when my eldest son was, about 4 years old, we were RV camping, having a great time, and after a day of playing, we noticed there was a little tiny speck on his leg. First we just thought it was a piece of dirt or something, never thought much of it. So when we tried to clear it away, we noticed that it was a small little tick. Now luckily we caught it right away and were able to remove it fairly easily. It seems now though that I knew what a tick was. I started paying more attention and started noticing them on me quite frequently. One place in particular, one of my favorite fishing spots in the whole world, and I try to frequent it a few times a year, but if I go up, especially after a rainstorm, like clockwork, I'll have ticks all over me. And this is becoming more and more of a problem because after I go there, I find ticks on my clothes, I find ticks in my car. The numbers are increasing each year. One day I was on a hike, I had a pair of shorts on, and not even 10 minutes into the hike, almost immediately I noticed a tick on my shin. I did not have tweezers with me, so I had to cut the hike short. Went in my truck. By the time I got home, the tick had detached itself and was nowhere to be found. I'm pretty sure I have a 5-pound tick living somewhere in my truck now. Last year was on an ATV ride in northern Ontario and just enjoying the amazing scenery and the fresh air. Again, was the time of my life. Just ripping those machines down these old logging roads on crown land, just finding numerous lakes and rivers. And of course, when we got home, I had a tick attached to my leg. That one was not so easy to remove. It was quite a large one, and I tried with tweezers, but I felt that it was just going to come apart in pieces, so I opted to go to the doctor and have it removed there. Then one day, I was doing a video for this channel and came home, did a tick check, everything else, everything was fine. Found no ticks on my clothes, everything was good. The very next day, we found a deer tick in the clothes hamper. Needless to say, Mrs. Woodlands North was not very happy, and we are now at war with these aggravating ticks. So let's try to understand what ticks are before we can move on to any preventative measures. So ticks are members of the arachnid family. Essentially, they're spiders that require a blood meal in order to grow and survive. Yes, this essentially means that they stealth the woods looking for animals to feast on their blood. Ticks range in size from 2 to 10 millimeters, can often be found on the forest floor hiding in leaves and also on grass and shrubs, usually no more than 24 inches off the ground. And yes, it is possible that they can live in lawns and gardens. So we understand a little bit about the tick habitat and that they're small stealth-like creatures. If they're so small, why all this fuss about them? Well, what they essentially do is burrow into your skin to access your bloodstream. And when they begin feeding on your blood, they can release bacteria and some pathogens into your blood, which in turn can make you sick. Some of these pathogens and diseases can be quite serious, especially if they're not treated quickly. Okay, I spend my fair share of time in the woods, fishing, ATVing, hiking, camping, and I do hear my fair share of myths, so I wanted to sort of talk of some of the ones that I hear about on a regular basis. Number one is that ticks can jump onto you or fall down from a tree onto you. This is a myth. There's no evidence to support that they jump or fall down from trees. In fact, they are often found on shrubbery no more than 24 inches off the ground. When you walk by, this piece of grass or this shrub rubs against your clothes, the tick is sitting on the blade of grass, something like this, and will latch on, hitch your free ride, and crawl around till it can find a blood meal. The next thing I hear is, well, it's not a big deal because as soon as the tick bites, I'll feel it and just remove it. This is also a myth. As the tick burrows into your skin, it releases a numbing agent, so you can't feel the tick biting at least most of the time. You don't even know it's there till sometimes several days later, and by then it could have already begun to transmit the diseases. Another myth I hear often is, oh, the ticks were all killed off in the winter, so there won't be any this spring. That's definitely a myth. Ticks are known to be active anytime the weather is above freezing. My personal experience is that it's rare to see them until the temperature gets a little warmer and we have a couple of rainfalls, but that's not a guarantee. It is possible to have a run-in with them even in near freezing temperatures. There were some studies done where the temperature was near freezing. They were testing for ticks. The one side of the hill was being blasted by the sun, the other side was not. Well, on the shaded side, the ticks were not active, but on the sunny side, it was warm enough that they were found to be active. Another thing I hear is, oh, I got bit by a tick, so I'm going to get sick. This is also a myth. Not all types of ticks carry all diseases, and even if they do, they don't necessarily transmit it, especially if you can remove the tick properly and quickly. Okay, so now that we have a pretty good understanding of ticks, let's talk about prevention. Now, the number one and the easiest thing you can do is simply to tuck your socks over your pants. You're not out there to win any fashion awards, people, so just take it in stride. This is a safety issue. Tuck your pants in. You'll be much safer. And I can attest to that because, as I said, in my ATV trip in Northern Ontario, went with my wife and 2 children. I had a rule that the kids would have to tuck in their pants to their socks, and I broke my own rule. My wife also tucked her pants into the socks. Everything was good for them. I was the only one that came home with a tick bite. Honey, you were right. That's gonna cost me so bad. Aww. So take heed. It does work. And never underestimate the effectiveness of dollar store duct tape. Got this at the dollar store. This is great to tape up your ankles or also taping up your wrists because they can also get onto your hand and crawl up. And if they're underneath your shirt, you won't notice them for some time. Another thing is to wear light colored clothing. No, this doesn't really repel them anyway. It just helps you spot the tick quicker, which means you can brush it off pretty easily and be done with it before it even bites you. The number 3 thing, it's recommended that you shower within a few hours of coming home from the woods. If the tick hasn't attached itself, this is very likely to wash the tick away. And another thing you can do are regular tick checks, especially the hot spots, but don't limit yourself to those areas. If you have somebody with you, they can help you spot some of the areas that you're not able to see as clearly. The first product that I'm going to talk about is one you're probably familiar with. It's good old DEET. And studies have shown that it does help to decrease the instances of tick bites. And what DEET does is it helps mask the scent, so they can't detect you as well, and they're going to have a harder time finding a spot to bite. But some studies do show that DEET isn't quite as effective as some of these other ones. The second thing I want to show you, and this is probably my favorite, is Permethrin. And this comes in a number of forms. This is a spray, so this is pre-mixed at a certain percentage. And what you do is you spray this onto your clothes and you let it dry overnight. It's odorless, it doesn't stain, at least in my testing it hasn't. And this doesn't necessarily repel the tick. The tick will still crawl onto you, but you'll see that continued exposure to it actually messes with the tick's nervous system, and the tick will eventually fall off and quite possibly die. That's the best case scenario, because with DEET, they'll still continue to crawl and crawl and crawl until eventually they may find a spot to feast. This will kill them. There's clothing that you can buy that has permethrin impregnated into it, and this does last through a couple of washes. Now this stuff is probably the most expensive other than the clothing. You can also buy permethrin like this and impregnate the clothing yourself with it, and I'm actually going to probably do a video on that because I think it's going to be important. These last couple of things, there's been mixed results. There's some promising information and there's some not so promising information, and it's going to be essential oils. This is a spray here called Nantucket Spider Spray, and there's a bunch of other ones. I'm not saying that this is the best one or the only one or you should get this one. What I can tell you is I do have a friend who regularly baits for deer. The area is a tick haven. It's known around here. You're pretty much guaranteed to get ticks on you if you go there. When he goes to do his work for his deer, he normally comes out with 15 to 20 ticks on him. And they usually spend half an hour or so at the truck picking off these ticks, checking everything, getting rid of them. The one day he went with a partner, he sprayed some essential oils on. His partner did not. His partner had, I think, 18 ticks, and he found only 2, which is the lowest he's ever gone with. Again, it's not 100%, and some studies show that it's not as effective, but there are some promising studies that show that they at least don't like the stuff, so they'll tend to keep away from it. It's not guaranteed, and again, you need to do your own research and see what works for you. So after all this talk about prevention, what happens if you do get bit? Number one thing is not to panic. The ticks usually won't transmit any diseases for at least 24 hours, and even though you are bitten by a tick, it's not guaranteed that they do carry any of these nasty diseases that could cause problems. But you do want to get it off you as soon as possible. Most experts would recommend a pair of fine tweezers. You grasp the tick as close to the skin as possible and pull straight out. There are other methods available as well. Tick twisters, where you would put the twister on your skin and twist till the tick comes out. There's also a tick key, which you kind of slide underneath the tick and then it just lifts it out. I know a lot of people like to use Vaseline or some kind of essential oil to drown the tick when it's been attached, and this is generally not recommended. What that essentially does is drowns out the tick, causes the tick to become stressed, and it could possibly vomit some of these parasites or bacteria into your bloodstream and could cause you even more problems. If you do remove the tick, carefully monitor the area for the next several days at least and check for any kinds of rashes or other symptoms that you might have. Also consider keeping that tick, sending it in for testing. That way you will know what you were up against, if it had any particular diseases that you'd need to be worried about. Don't just take my word for this. If you're unsure in any way, shape, or form, see a doctor. So I think we're almost getting to the conclusion of this video, but I did want to leave you with a couple of things. I know there's a lot of information in here and some of it might be scary. It wasn't intended to scare anybody. I just wanted to educate everyone so that they know what they're up against. For me, staying indoors, not an option. I need to get out there, and the time of year where I go most often is trout season. That's when the ticks are most active in my area. And that being said, all this information is from my experience for the ticks in the habitat in my area. It may differ slightly in your area, so I encourage you, do your own research. So the strategy I've come up with to deal with ticks goes something like this. Number one, I am going to use permethrin on my pants, on my socks, and even on my shoes. And this way, that even if the tick does get on me, its exposure to that permethrin will hopefully cause it to fall off and I won't have to worry about it. I am still going to tuck my socks in, or better yet, use duct tape just to keep them from even getting up into your leg. Next thing I'm going to do when I get home, I'm going to change in my garage take all those clothes that I wore off, because I have brought them into the house before. Those clothes go into a garbage bag and will sit there for a little while I go inside, and then later on I'll run that through the wash and also through the dryer. It's also been shown that some of the ticks can survive a wash, but they don't like the dryer. When I go inside, I'm going to shower, and I'm going to probably use a shampoo that has some kind of essential oil. Again, this is not a guarantee that these are going to work, but I'm just hoping at this point that the essential oil is just going to help the tick wash away with minimal problems, and that would be a good scenario. Another thing is to just pick your battles. If you know it's a bad time of year in a bad area, you may want to consider going somewhere else. In my case, it's a good time of year for fishing, it's a bad time of year for ticks, so I need to come up with a strategy. And the last thing, do thorough and regular tick checks. If you have a partner that can help you with this, that'd be even better. Consider bringing a mirror with you to check some of those not so easy to see spots, and make sure you get those ticks off you as soon as possible. Again, guys, take this all with a grain of salt. Don't substitute this information for that of a doctor, and your own research. Do your own research in your own area. Things might be a little bit different where you are. So guys, thank you so much for sticking with me through this video. I really enjoyed getting the information out to you. I've tried to get as complete and thorough as information as I can to get you guys educated. So please stay safe. I do want to see you in the next video. Until then, take care, my friends.